concepts are, and there's no concept about war. What are the significant wars? What are the significant wars?
Right.
So if we want a new concept,
I'm not sure it needs to be significant wars, but I think it's hard to say that the wars don't influence American history. I mean, there's civil wars in there, revolutionary wars in there.
right? Which are primary focuses for the elementary level.
Right, and that's because we've stopped at the Civil War up to this point. So there's not going to be a concept where they include those other pieces because it hadn't been right. We're going to change it. So I don't know if it needs to be war. I don't really know what it needs to be. I'm just wondering if we're looking at what we actually want the kids to know, whether or not it's a current concept or whether it's not. Do we want to make sure we're including some of those things if we're going to go from Reconstruction to World War II? Whether it's on there or not, or do we look for where it might fit? I don't know. And the answer may be no. I'm just trying to think through it before we.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing you bring up, it would mean adding a new concept into the strand. About some sort of significant events that is not already covered in the existing concepts, so which have been the traditional concepts in elementary, like westward expansion, political development, civil war.
I think we have the only political development, the big ones, I think, would be the League of Nations. And that was a big political development in the end of the 1900s, or the beginning of the 1900s. It was more development. So I could see, and that would tie in.
So the challenge with that is that that's not really a political development in the U.S.
So we are part of that.
If you look at the other things that are listed there as political development, those are all U.S.
Yes. I can live without it. Just trying to honor.
No, I guess my heart, it's hard for me to think that we would just gloss over World War I and not mention much at all with it. I think that's a pretty, it just seems like it's probably, why it may not be World War II, it seems like we could enter into a war with large numbers of the world. It might be a historical event that was part of our country's history. So I may be, everybody else is saying no, it's not a big event, and I'm fine with that. I just feel like it might be something with it, I don't know. But again, I think, and it may not be till later, but even when you get into figuring out how causes of World War II, so that's again, I'm not sure how deep we're going to go into what we mean by that. It's hard to figure out causes of World War II without knowing what happened at the end of World War I. But so most of them just kind of playing devil's advocate, just make sure we kind of thought through some of those. But if everybody's like, no, we're good with the way it is, then I'm good with the way it is.
So you're saying the only thing that really came out there was the League of Nations? I want to ask a question because I'm not a teacher. I don't mean that like that. We're trying to decide what to mention about World War I.
Or if that's what I'm wondering. Does it feel like this is something we want to make sure kids are hearing about? Is World War I a significant historical event that we want kids to be hearing about?
Neglected. Like I said last time, I learned it all after school and I did it on my own. I still don't understand it. It's just about those allies is what it seems like. I don't know what the point of it was. The League of Nations came out of it, but we were never part of the League of Nations group.
So here's the thing, there's no place in here where we talk about the causes of World War II. That's just not part of this right now. So adding the causes of World War I would be adding,
I think when you add all these other historical times that it's never been a part of it, I think we have to decide what it is that we mean by adding it. Are we just when we teach up to World War II,
but what are we teaching about?
That's what I'm kind of trying to figure out.
Well, it says in what we're teaching about.
limited number of time.
That's what, for a
Yeah, no,
teacher.
no, no, concept.
Yeah, no, that's what, for a teacher, are you just getting to?
And I'm just wondering, are we
bog
still,
down?
because if we're looking at this history being a major, whether it is or isn't, it's a major focus of the strand of how we're teaching a lot of these other things. And I guess I probably should have been here Friday, maybe it would be easier, but even as we start to go through, we're gonna talk about the Great Depression when we look at economics. Did we talk about the Great Depression in economics? Have we talked about the New Deal when we talk about the economic strand? Did we talk about any of those pieces when we even looked at kind of the strand forward?
Yeah, that's, I think, the second phase of when we do the vertical alignment. I mean, we might have missed that, but those are the kinds of things that people pick up
Right.
when we go through.
Right. So I mean, that's what, so and that's, if we're going up to World War II, what is it? We had the same conversation. We talked about going up to Civil War. We talked about where we were going to stop. That part of that, even if we went through fourth grade. So if fourth grade stops at colonial, who's going to cover those causes of the American Revolution? Is that, I think it's a similar conversation. We're just now adding another historical milestone. So if we stop at 1938, what goes on between 1865 and 1938 that we want to make sure we're covering? Just the nation's history.
As long as we don't try to micromanage. Because I'm sitting here thinking, like, even when you guys last time typed the names of all the people, to me that's more of a resource. That's not a standard, because districts will take this into their curriculum, and then teachers pick and choose what they teach. So every child in the state of Missouri needs to know that teachers have leeway to go with it. And I think as educators, you want to put more and more and more in the box, and I do too. But I would just be hesitant of listing people and events and places, and I'm more of a fan of the time frame. From this time to this time, and then maybe a couple key points that you want to hit, and the rest can be put in a resource or something, but there's got to be some leeway there. It's going to feel too constricting. And then, like you said, you have a limited amount of time, and if you're looking at that one box with all those people listed in that one concept at the top, it's really overwhelming.
And it's tricky, because there was some intention when we moved it somewhere, and that we didn't feel like what we did in the past, because of the names that were in the box. So it was more an idea of making sure that when you saw those examples, that you knew that it was broader than
So
the
those-
men who are traditionally listed
Then
there.
white men.
So
Yes,
those are just
yes.
the
Then
examples,
white men.
not the required.
Right.
Because of what the,
Just making sure.
but the intent of the example was for that reason.
Okay. Because I look at that and think, oh my gosh, my teacher was.
And like. Intentional.
It was. No, but that's great.
Can we talk about some of the examples of the examples for that? It didn't have to be those people, that was just an example.
So do we just want to leave it as is?
For
And
now.
kind of throw some stuff
Yes.
here.
Put a little note in here, so we'll come back to it. The second time through, I'll put a little note. Let's see, Patrick. All right, let's tackle strength six. I can get there. This green here, this is the part I wasn't sure what we did since I'm passing it. I don't remember why we put that in green. I think it wasn't a unanimous decision.
Green was the correction, I thought.
Right, it wasn't a unanimous decision, so we have to figure out, so when we get through this a second time, let's figure that piece out. That was in economics. typed that in last time, saying if we include folklore, this would be where we probably put it. So it was just for us to have a discussion point around it.
Craig, are we on video?
Yes.
I've always felt this was an odd strand in terms of how things are clustered together here. You've got the culture stuff, you've got wants and needs, which I think we cover economics. And then you've got conflict resolution. It's always felt a little bit like a catch-all, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't like this part. You have to read it a couple of times to think, okay, what am I actually teaching now?
Yeah.
I think some of it can be put into different places and fit better. Maybe this one is just culture. Just glad we didn't start with this one.
Right, that was one reason.
I know in NCS, International Council for Social Studies, old standards, this is similar to that.
To what?
To what the NCSS used to have.
Yes.
But
But
now it's
not within, and also not within the cells, but the title.
Title of it.
Yeah. Because NCSS also has a separate one now that's strictly about like global connections. So there was this one and there was a global connection, and it seems like when this was constructed, they tried to fit some of those together. And then left all the global stuff for middle school.
Right.
Like ideas and beliefs of different cultures, there's nothing. All the way up to grade 8. That's K, is the concept. It's my own belief that, things that are happening in other parts of the world are increasingly affecting our country. Yeah. Being a better understanding of that. do we want to start the way we always did? I think we have a lot of time to looking at the concepts, and we see the concepts seem to make sense for this grade level.
And I was just trying to look and see what South Carolina and Connecticut did. But yeah, that would be fine. Okay, well, here are. If you want something to write on, here's some of these. I've got more copies. You know, I'm seeing in, okay, I can look at these, but I'm seeing in Connecticut and South Carolina where there's parts of this in there. They've just got it connected to other things. It's not its own strand. You can find it, it's just not.
I think the way that Massachusetts lays it out, is you have history and geography, civics and government, economics, United States leaders, symbols, sports, and holidays, and then you have individuals, families, and communities now and long ago. And to me, that's that part of daily life, culture, customs,
Right.
traditions.
Right.
That gets kind of lost here because there's so many concepts, and a lot of those concepts are geared towards high school. But some of the things that we have here, I don't know, I was looking back at economics, we really have, all of those are really part of that economics.
The
Right.
wants and needs stuff.
And
The difference is we have described examples of, that's what
Right.
we did,
Right.
versus here, maybe there's one.
and
And this is culture focused. Where does culture focus, right? I think that's really.
South Carolina has recognized that families of the past have made choices to fulfill their wants and needs, and families do so in the present. So it's going with that. That's at the kindergarten level.
I could easily see us taking all these boxes and seeing if we could put that in the string. Or renaming the string and making it all
I
fit
don't-
together better.
I don't think we can,
I like renaming the string and making it better.
Are we allowed to rename strands?
no, that's one of those, that's one of those
Oh, that's-
fluid placemat
It
things.
could be empty, maybe just take blue, like you're still be a six there, we could do that.
Right, and we can gut it and move it somewhere else.
Well, there's not much there now. I mean, really,
Right.
there's first grade, second grade, third grade, kindergarten for A. B only has second and fourth, C.
Right, there's only one or two in each of these.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much there.
Just mentioning the OPEC would be looking at any sort of character education type programming in here.
Yeah, I think that's a
piece that
great.
falls in.
Or does that fall in the citizenship one?
There is, I mean, there isn't one right now.
I know there isn't, you're right, but I think traditionally it falls in the citizenship strand, right?
I would have said so. Citizenship, character,
Right, but I don't know where that falls on our seven there.
But right now there is no character ed.
That's what I'm saying. So is this,
So it should be added in 6.
and it looks like they kind of like take a constructive process or method
Right.
of resolving conflict. To me, that's what, that looks like some of the character ed type work.
And I think that's actually in schools of those. I think it's kind of a duplicate one, so there's a bit of laws and rules are made, responsibilities, citizens. peaceful resolution to a dispute, propose peaceful resolution to disputes in the classroom and playground. So those are already existing in governance. So that whole kind of conflict resolution stuff. Way back when we looked at these, a couple of the things that, I mean, like, first couple of sessions that we talked about that, you know, we're looking at the social studies language, we were saying there were a couple of things that were sort of missing. One was a real kind of citizenship, active citizenship part, and another was social justice. Social justice. Yeah, that concept. That was all joke. But another was,
that was the joke.
was adding more kind of understanding of the world.
Sorry, I could help it. I could help it.
Yeah, the other was, the more was like more
I brought that
understanding of the
first
rest
up.
of the world.
Yeah.
Because the rest of all these strands is very kind of looking inward, looking at the U.S., and not a whole lot about what's happening in the rest of the world.
Are we, and I don't mean this like this, are we supposed to be looking at what's happening in the rest of the, I mean, the lower grades, are we including that? That's not a bad thing, I just don't.
Right. Yeah.
According to their maturity, when we say we're doing some world history, but as far as current stuff, I mean,
Yeah. And part of that was, you know, the world's changed quite a bit since these were first written. And it's really hard to understand, even at the elementary level, what's going on without understanding a little bit more about the world.
No, I agree, I just didn't know if we were sticking to US.
I think U.S. history we are, but there's also, I think this opens an opportunity.
Well, it says what?
Right. Because that strand goes all the way across all K-12 grades.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so the
Right.
world
Instead of-
really
well, I'm
comes
just
in
thinking we
sixth
were
grade.
just-
But
that was
here's what
cool.
happened in sixth grade is we talked about suddenly we jumped from U.S. and now you're going to do nothing but study about the world, and it's like world history. That's all it is. And although some worlds you're not going to be doing it. And one of the challenges with that is that if there's not any groundwork, like, even in understanding that people are people, whether they're wherever they live, and they have some common social needs, and they have common emotional and physical needs, then it's really hard for children to understand that. And what a lot of the literature says is that if we don't teach them that, then they start stereotyping really early on. And whether we're talking about people in our own backyard or whether we're talking about people from across the world. If we don't provide them some sort of framework for understanding human existence.
There's a lot we can say on that. I mean, I understand that, I just, yeah, I don't know, my kids understood that there's other people. But I don't think it's bad to, you know, I think it's in how it's done.
Yeah, traditionally what we do is we say, look how different they are. They wear different clothes, they eat different food, right?
They are.
And so we do, we
That's why I
say,
like different geography.
yeah, we're just like, look how different they are. And isn't that cool? You know, that's usually the add-on, right? But what that leaves children thinking of is, wow, they're really different from me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I understand that. Yeah. How much of that are we, I guess we have to start thinking about it?
Yeah, so I think that was the intent of what that first strand is.
I think the strand was written for the upper grades. Or they just didn't, they're just not clear enough on the lower grades. When you scroll and keep scrolling, I mean, you could add under each of the concepts, but if they stand alone like this and they're not connected to something else, you're gonna teach it, you're gonna assess it, I'd rather see it integrated somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's why it's how it's taught.
I believe that that doesn't make much sense to me at all.
For instance.
I don't understand. I don't really understand what the first strand's actually. I don't understand what they're trying to do at all.
Cultural place to act.
Yeah. What? Yes.
And so I think if
I
you're all.
was like, yes, they did.
You're
I
saying
don't know
that's
what
bad?
they're trying to get at. I don't know what that means.
And to me, I think like, if,
I don't see that as an
Right. I wonder if you can't just make this more of the character and just
To me, it's about daily life,
right.
culture, tradition,
Yeah,
why, my relationship with my community developed
Yeah, I
in
know.
many ways out of
Yeah.
what daily life is like in my community, and what traditions are in my community, what.
But if you're setting the intention from the start, that's what I'm saying. It makes the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we,
Track people in the children's fund.
I think those things could easily fit in all the programs to make them go like this. But
I mean,
if we've got to live with strand 6, then what can we do to make sure they match?
Well, for instance, I'll just argue with my friends that folklore is not history.
Right.
So we have to
But it's
resolve
a cultural
our.
tradition.
Yeah, I mean cultural. You've got a
Tradition is hard.
has,
Right.
I think a lot of that too.
Oh,
But they're able to
absolutely.
study that and how.
No, we can change the concepts, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We have
We
it
can
on
change
there.
concepts,
We have
we
to
can't
change
change
concepts.
the, yeah.
So I think that if we're stuck with the strand and we focus on relationships and cultural traditions, if we can change
If you go to her.
it might help us
You know what I mean?
move across easier.
Is that always?
If we say it again.
I don't think A says cultural meaning the needs of people. I don't know if that's, is that what we wanna stay with? To me, I would give a clear focus of what I'm supposed to teach.
Well, I don't wanna do something here that's just basically a repeat of something else, because that's just cumbersome, and that's one of our goals was changing sometimes. So I think it's important to look at what's happening economic and decide, yeah, that's already there. In fact, most of these things already exist somewhere else. I'm more worried about the things that just aren't there, period.
So can we agree to take out the things that already exist somewhere else? Can we start there? Because like you said, I scroll down to like D, E, F, and G, and I'm like, oh gosh, some of these could be addressed at lower levels, but I can't start that without knowing some of this is repetitive. I know.
Look at economics and look at.
Well, here's this. This is what's already there. So all we're doing is looking for that.
This is
Somewhere
what
else.
already used to be there.
Right.
Oh, but I'm looking for what we updated in economics.
That's what I'm saying, but at least you can use this
Oh,
with your
yeah.
updated.
Okay.
Just show me
I have
copy.
one.
Oh, well, then you're good. So I guess now what I'm looking at is what is in strand 6 that we've repeated somewhere else? Because if it's repeated, there's no place, no point in leaving it.
Really not like any other music class in that case.
It isn't. I'm so
What's wrong
sorry.
with it?
I think cups are big, maybe. I don't know.
Wow. That's the thing with all the boxes.
It even seem to repeat themselves. Methods of resolving conflicts in C, and then J is methods of resolving conflicts.
Yeah.
You know you can control F and then type in a keyword and type something on too.
So I don't, the only ones that I know of that are close to repeat are the ones that you, that they're not exactly the same. should be with the but yeah, since the word culture isn't in there, I think most people look at that and they just think wants and needs.
Right. So wants and needs are covered.
Yeah.
Describe example of needs and wants within your family and school.
Yeah.
Maybe not physical, social, emotional,
But how do you teach it without being?
but that's what I'm saying, so we find you there,
Um,
and where did you find that out?
Economics.
Economics.
Yeah.
In economics.
I think the difference is with this is that it's about cultures, different cultures.
Then maybe the story used examples. Such as, and list a couple, and it would seem more like they're having to look outward instead of.
Whether we change the economics one to. So number 3 is
I
I think is really.
the way ours is laid out. I don't know about anybody else, I just hate this. I think it makes much more sense to organize it by grade level and by this, and you can put some of these things by grade level as opposed to the way this is. So you could actually see some of these things instead of worrying, is it here, is it there, it doesn't really matter as long as it's in there someplace. I don't know, that's just one, it's kind of a side thing, school, I guess.
For concept A, grade 3, I think is a really good statement. Grade 3. That makes a real distinction compared to the wants and needs strength of economics.
And I think they might have thrown 3 in there, and we just said, oh, there's something that they want, name, and
That seems
Both
really.
scaffold and there it is.
Yeah, that seems really reasonable.
I'm with you too. I hate this format, and the more I look at other states, it's so much easier to read, and I don't get, I don't feel the tension I do with this form.
When I work with teacher candidates, I break it into grade levels. I do exactly what Patrick just said. But you kind of have to do, I think you kind of have to do this first before you do that so that you can get the big picture. Like you were just saying, well, okay, if we only look at grade 3, are we going to scaffold? This allows you to be able to think about, yeah, maybe we should scaffold that concept.
No, this is great to start. I would just like to
Yeah.
hear it in product and do something.
I agree.
But couldn't we, thinking about where that third grade goes, couldn't it be relative to describe customs and traditions in your family and school?
Yep.
Describe
Yep.
in your school and community, in regions across the United States, and couldn't it become that? Can you still be, because you're gonna find that particularly here, or could even be here, there are things that are customs and traditions that are part of your community or your region that really come from other places in the world.
Sure.
We were having a German discussion.
Oh.
He said that they have a beer stein or something in the mail. Well, that's what you think of when you think of Germans. I guess they stereotype. But then, like, if you go to Herman, Missouri, they're proud of it. So
Later.
they have like beer fest. So
Yeah.
it's not always bad to think of what their culture's known for. I guess it's like, right now, if you hate them for it, okay, that's not right.
Unless you're a Baptist.
And
beer.
finish the sentence.
That's fair. Oh, if you're a good Baptist. Or Methodist, for that matter.
No comment.
I would
Now he's serious.
I remember.
Yes,
Well, that's doctor.
Yeah.
That's written down.
I think
Independent free will.
I think finding the things that was once in
I don't believe there.
Whatever.
So,
Hey, they read just that.
I agree, but I'm stuck on
Yeah.
the question.
But I mean, they're, they say that.
Well, but
I
there-
think to me, developmentally, a tradition or custom is, I think, a culture is a bigger idea that's harder to understand at that grade level.
So,
So there is if you look down at F, we start talking about culture traditions. So there's actually some concepts that are based on traditions. There's I is the same thing. We have nothing in those cells, and I think that'd be a great place to do that. My sense of that first one is the idea that all people, regardless of where they live, have some common needs. And if you understand that, then you can also look at, it's a large geographical, history, economic way of
Maybe
looking
it
at
should
the
be that
world.
all people share. That all people have this.
So, all people have common physical needs.
So we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy.
Absolutely. All people have common social needs. All people have,
Most of them.
and they're usually fulfilled based on their
Maslow's hierarchy,
resources,
but that's what
the
it is.
history of their area. So we all need to live in houses. Our houses look differently. We all need shelter, but they look differently, largely because of resources and geography. Because if you can build that understanding, then it helps anyone be able to look at something else and start to make sense of what's happening. Interpret it. You may not agree with it, but at least you can interpret it. So they're doing this thing, whatever it is. I don't agree with what they're doing, but I kind of understand why they're doing it. So it's not a normative question as much as it is a question of understanding.
Okay, so here's my addition to this conversation.
What's the opposite?
Fiddler on the Roof. I love
That
part,
was great.
Fiddler on the Roof. Fiddler's one of my favorites.
So I like the word culture. And I think it needs to put throughout. Like Olin said, 3A, it's very easy to understand. So I'm all for getting rid of KA and 1A and rewriting something else. So KA describe.
They're only there for us. High school's not using any of the concepts. They're not using that as a reference.
No, they reinterpreted them down below.
But they're not keeping track
So
of
weird,
everything.
yeah.
Okay, wait, explain that. They're not using any format we have.
If you go across,
They are using
here you see it starts
Okay.
getting empty. This goes empty all the way to
Right.
K-12 to 12.
Right.
So they're not teaching this concept.
I thought we couldn't do letters.
No, we can't.
Yes,
do
with the letters, no with the
can't do
numbers, the
the
standards
way
of the
with the
numbers.
thing in the gray box.
Okay.
So those things up there we're stuck with, the letters we can change.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we all agree.
We agree. You're
That's a unanimous.
you're not alone.
That is a unanimous.
Found common ground.
And Alden, you said that you like how grade 3, and how did you suggest to scaffold that down?
I didn't.
You didn't.
We just said we kind of like the way that is, and maybe that needs to be, hello.
Everything going well?
Well, it will at about 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
That's
in case
when it usually
we
kicks
always
in.
start a little bit slow.
Check with us at 1 o'clock and
We
we'll
start on a stationary bike.
Yes, yes. We settle it,
Before you Lance Armstrong it up, huh?
I'm telling you.
Then we fix the block out
Second round of
under it.
coffee.
Yeah.
I hear ya. All right.
Thanks for checking in.
Yeah. Actually, I think Kathy had a good way to scaffold it. To take that, maybe we entertain that, to take that number 3 and scaffold it based on those
State.
grade level.
What I started writing in.
Is described.
Well, I started deleting because you thought it was in a different concept maybe. But what if we take concept F,
Methods of actions, cultural tradition, institution.
okay, dodge that and move it up to A? Or no? Or we rename A?
I actually don't have a problem with the concept today, so it's just how it's
Worded, doesn't
worded
it?
in the standards. And I think it's worded well in standard 3, in a way, or in grade 3.
So look at A and look at B. A is cultures, communities of people.
Yep.
B is groups, communities of individuals. Yeah, there's not gonna be a whole lot to differentiate there. So,
So
Well, one's
have-
about a culture, one's about a
A
group,
group
and
and a
you see
group
they
would be
say it's like
considered a culture.
family, but it says it's like a family.
Well, I think it
Change that.
depends. What I hear Alden saying is that.
Yes,
I
and.
exactly.
Yes, and
But that goes.
That they're two different things. No, and I agree with you, that they're two different things.
Can you make them clear?
So I understand that kind of advocating for keeping A, but refining what it is not clear in A.
Right.
I think- yeah, that's-
No, it's very
And
fun.
I agree with you. So I think I was jumping to a new part. I think that was a different concept really than what we're talking about in terms of strand A. But, so if so 3 says what we think it's getting at, correct? But none of the others do. So where would we put 3? Does it say where it's at based on this? And the different cultures at various times?
Okay, so Kathy, before we decide that, I'm gonna go down to F, and I'm gonna type in what you said, because I don't wanna lose what you said earlier. You know what I'm talking about? So what did you say earlier?
Well, I can't remember. But it would be something to the effect of describe how.
Okay, what we were talking about.
Something about cultural and traditions and family.
In my family, in my school community, in my
Tell me that,
in my
word,
region.
describe how, I think it's going over.
Well, I have daily life culture and tradition. But
Okay, so you say.
because to me part of, but I was trying to combine that idea of wants and needs into that to make it work, because part of my daily life is wants and needs. How are those things? So, but what I'm hearing now is that we want those separated. So, to me, it would be customs and traditions. I think customs is I think culture comes in a
Got it.
later grade, but I think you can understand customs.
So this is what I wrote down when you say custom. Widely accepted way of speaking. And then traditions was a long established custom. And then cultural was related to the ideas of customs and social behavior of society. So I think if the word cultural is defined, you're gonna pull in the traditions and the custom, and it's not gonna be confusing.
When I think custom, I always think Elohim. It's customary to say thank you when someone gives you a compliment. And then she would.
And I think
Thank
going to
you.
the airport and getting checked your customs. So then I think how's a kindergartner gonna perceive that? Does he know it's customary, or does it say yes and say no, thank you, or is, I don't know. So then I look at the vocabulary and think, well, how do we scaffold that?
That's why I like that daily life thing in there, but it's how you live every day. It's how we get along with each other, because the core of the string is
Daily
about
interaction,
relationship.
or is it just daily life? Or daily life encompasses daily interaction?
Let me,
Describe how daily life, customs, and traditions are similar and different between families and schools. Or
Is a
whatever.
custom not a tradition? Because to me, I'm thinking of these like synonyms. Aaron, what do you think? Like if you told your kids, define custom, define tradition, would they be like, you go,
I've been- yeah,
I think
same
they're
thing.
different.
to a kindergarten?
At a second grade level,
The tradition is, you know,
it's really hard.
It is a
Even
distinction.
culture and custom
Yeah, those two I
that
think are closer.
concept is so,
I think daily life and custom
They-
are more similar than custom and tradition.
Me too.
Yes. Daily life, customs, and traditions.
A tradition you might do once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a custom tradition. Customs every day. Daily life, every day.
I guess what I'm saying is if you want to get rid of one, I'd have an easier time letting go of custom and keeping daily life.
Me
And I
too.
wouldn't-
That's what I'm saying. I think all three is too much.
Are similar.
Very different.
How about a new chat? How would you guys all like to get rid of all this resolving conflict stuff and move it up into governance with the other resolving disputes? If you look in governance right now, there's all kinds of stuff on dispute resolution.
I don't think that would have worked previously, but with those designations, that probably would work.
And
You
that would
talk
help.
about in relationship to those folks.
Because, like, for instance, in governance, you've got explain how to resolve disputes peacefully in the classroom and on the playground in kindergarten. Basically same thing in grade 1. Demonstrate peaceful resolution of disputes, grade 2. When there's analyze peaceful resolutions of disputes. I mean, so, you know, all of that stuff, I think it's just an odd fit in this institutions and traditions.
I think maybe when they wrote it, they looked at how different cultures resolve conflict. You know, not everybody.
But not for
resolves it like we do.
kindergarten, not for
No, right.
elementary, I mean, it's take part in a constructive method for resolving conflict. I mean, it's basically the same thing as.
No, they're not tying this into their strengths.
Yeah. You know, evaluate constructive methods, processes or methods for resolving conflicts. So this is all about conflict resolution. There are how many of those?
But what I'm saying is I can see how that can relate to cultural differences. But maybe that's more of a world history thing.
Well, not for C. Look at C concept.
I know, the methods of resolving conflict.
Right.
These could be tied into cultural if they were worded differently.
Yeah, if they were, yeah.
Because think about, you know, the kids who steal and get their hands cut off, or the kids who get whipped in public, and you know, you think about all those things that are like, oh my gosh, that's how they resolve their conflict.
Yeah.
Are they disciplined, are they governed, or?
Yeah, if you wanted to write in that kind of cultural thing, but I mean, what's sitting there right now doesn't really fit with everything else. And I think it fits with that, I think that you could move it into what's in governance,
I think we could try it, see what it looks like.
because they're almost worded identically.
I'm still stuck on it.
I'm trying to move you off of that.
I
To a
know.
point
I
where
know.
you can let
I know.
that sit for a minute, and percolate, and,
It's just looking through different perspectives. The strands are about looking at the same things over and over again through different perspectives. I'm looking at it through government. You know, so in government, they separated out because it was looking at it from the government's point of view. Why, how are authoritarian decisions in school? How are, you know, but here they're looking at it, and I hate this, from the individual's point of view out. So it's a different perspective. It's from here out instead of there out.
but I don't think so. I think in
should it be written differently for us to look at a cultural lens for how do we resolve things, how they do it other places, how do we do it here? Or do we just need to leave it in governance because they're the same on the K-5? But we're not talking 612.
So my preference would be to leave the governance and then flesh out a couple of the concepts that are completely in trade that deal with other cultures. Fix a, I don't know what to do. Then there's, F that
The
you.
social emotional part that didn't fit with the economic.
Right. It is. It absolutely is. Because I'm thinking through my, I teach on poverty around the nation. And a piece of that is we don't teach kids how to be members of groups as well. And kids in poverty especially, so they end up getting into negative groups. I think this is something we have to teach kids. But I don't know how to write it in so it fits. So I get why it's in there. It's important. Social membership is huge.
To me, the difference, like even in the conflict one, is when I'm looking back at the government, it talks about what do we do when, if I'll get a kindergarten level. What do we do when we're at recess and I want to swing and you want to? That's to me that one. This one is more, what do I do when you look different from me? Does that mean I treat you different from me? To me, that there's a different conflict there than what the objectives of us are doing under the government.
You're saying C grade 3 says something about.
I'm saying that democratic decision making kinds of things feel different to me than
But that's
people who
exactly
are
what it
or are
says
not
to do.
accepted in a social group.
But that's exactly what it says to do. Take part in a constructive process of methods for resolving conflicts, such as process methods include identifying problem, listing alternatives, selecting criteria. It has nothing to do with culture.
Right. I think they have it screwed up on here.
Right, I
That's
think
what I'm
we
saying.
can all
Right.
agree
Yeah.
this can go,
Yeah.
the word.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I
but
think it's redundant of what's above.
right, if we believe in this, if we believe that what you're talking about, then we have to rework the wording to include that and leave the governance piece alone. So when we look different or when we act different, how do I react to that? How do I perceive others?
Other cultures and
Right.
relationships between groups and
Right.
from individuals to groups.
Right.
And individuals. How do I respond to cultures that are different than mine? How do I respond to groups who are different than those people I am? To me, it's all good.
It is. For sure it is, in my thinking. Because you're trying
And yet
to
we all still have these common needs.
right. You're trying to develop empathy and help kids see outside of themselves and their groups.
And I think there are cells in here that are just empty. That's what that's for. So effective personal and group experiences on perception. Probably one of them. And there's nothing in until 6th grade. It's always like this that first morning, isn't it? It is. It is.
And then you keep going,
Funny that way.
We have a kindergarten that was rushed to ICU this morning.
Oh, that's terrible.
And that's our last night because he thought he wasn't able to breathe. He was taken to the hospital last night. Mom found him not breathing.
Oh, it's terrible.
He's an asthma attack. This particular student was scary because he's tried to commit suicide several times. He's stuck metal things in outlets. He's tried to jump off of things. So every time else he was doing, he threatened. He wanted to jump head first off of the playground equipment. But this kid was scary. We found out he drew a picture of himself jumping out of his grandma's window, laying on the ground, talking about how he was going to die. And then we find out that he's actually he tried to jump in the lion pit at the zoo. So I found him in his bed last night not breathing. But it was an asthma attack.
Not a.
Because when I heard about it this morning, I was like, that was probably they're updating me on something. So far, I've been fortunate enough not to have any of my duluth students in my school so far.
It's definitely not easy.
I saw you outside the school the other day.
Did you?
Going to pick up the stop sign.
Oh, what's my stop sign?
Signs in the morning.
Yeah, that's my crosswalk. Hey, you should have stopped on in. See, so
Well, there was enough traffic. There was enough traffic going in and out that I wasn't going to stop. I wanted to, and I thought, I'd better just keep rolling.
Performing my civic responsibilities. That's part,
Add that in somewhere.
we're getting it fixed. They've added a few things, and we're working on it. So
How much do you think?
there's a
Yeah.
crosswalk.
Maybe I'll.
It's
I think she's, yeah.
it's fully volunteer right now. I'll double your salary from what I paid you last year.
Okay, while you've been out, we have painstakingly discussed the concepts. We haven't gone any further than that.
Oh, and this one.
Yeah, and so here's the crux of it is C is, if I can get up there. C is about resolving conflict.
So it's Jay.
But that's also, we find that in government.
Right.
So, in one instance, we're talking about how do we resolve conflicts from a institutional type point of view kind of thing. Where here we're talking about, we really are coming at it, how do we, so, if you look different than I, how do we approach that, how do we resolve those kind of cultural differences?
Cultural clash.
Right. But that, you don't find that in this, it's not worded that way.
Oh, it's written these interpersonally. If you and I were two friends and we didn't get along with each other, how could we come up with some sort of?
Which is what's also up in government.
That's what these are.
But the K-5 governance is the same thing.
Yeah.
So we're trying to come up with how do we rewrite these so they honor what we're trying to get out of it and leave government the way it is.
Yeah, look at C and J.
Then we all look at it again. No, that's why I don't know why this one.
Right.
Great.
Same concept.
Right.
So I like what Kathy was saying before Oh, you mean the ones that have nothing in them? I know, I'm with you.
The ones that, but I think they could.
They
come
could,
down.
yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we were talking
I think F and I are big ones. And maybe H. F, I, and H, I could see. I'm not sure we can, I think it would be very difficult to teach younger kids how to navigate through cultural fashion. But I think if we can teach some sort of appreciation, and I know it's kind of goes to what you maybe were talking about there, understanding of differences, and then learning the skills for interpersonal fashions. I mean, a lot of those skills are still going to be the same. So if we're already talking about, if Aaron and I were disagreeing, or even as we were talking about with our language arts friends upstairs, maybe we could figure out a way that, you know, how would we address that? How, you know, it's not that we always have to agree, but how do we manage when we don't agree? Like some of those are bigger skills. I think that maybe a separate skill from culture clashes. Well, maybe not separate, but even the same. That idea that you're going to listen to each other, respect the other person's opinion, even if you don't agree with it, respect the other person. So I think some of those things. So I think if we can just look at this from a perspective of how do we learn about people that are different than ourselves. And I don't know if that's even nothing we've been saying, and that's what I kind of like those three.
I like the other one I'd add here was just K.
That one I worry about, and the reason why is I'm not sure how you ever determine which. I think you could say that it's an understanding that different cultures, other cultures may have different beliefs, but if we try to do of different cultures, are we actually going to have to say which cultures we want to try to, yeah, and even that, I think I'm afraid that would lead to stereotypical viewpoints of certain things, as opposed to just different understandings. I would always, if we want to switch and just make sure there's an understanding that different cultures may have different beliefs. I read the same one. How you pick? What do you pick? And then how do you determine what part of those cultures you highlight, which parts you don't, and then do you make the assumption that all 1 billion of the Chinese people, if we're talking about the Chinese culture, all do things exactly the same? You know, and even if you get into Indian culture, something thinking about it's not any one. You know, so that would be my. That's where I would have a hard time with that one.
Same here. In the United States. People in the middle of the country do things a lot different than they do on the West Coast or East Coast.
But I think
But that's why it centers on the individual, it's the relationship of the individual.
Right.
So
It's
if,
that way in this room.
if you were
really.
going, yeah, if you were
We're all
going to
that way.
teach that in kindergarten, you'd say, well, where are the cultures in our family, what in our classroom? That's your decision. And if you're talking about the state of Missouri, what are the cultures represented in the state of Missouri? By the way, we also have some of that in the history system. So I think, for me, that's less problem of which ones to study, because I always say try to make it relevant to the child.
And today we're fearful, adults are, not kids at this point, we're fearful of Sharia law, we're fearful of some of those things, so if that comes over here, then how will that change our culture? Do we even allow it? We're accepting of some things until they say we're going to do this to women because it's part of our law. Well, we're not okay with that. So, when does acceptance end and individual rights of women take over? I know that's secondary, but I mean,
Yeah,
that's really.
that's not a part of this.
Right, but that's a part of this whole idea though, of
But there are American Muslims.
right.
And so, you know, are you going to act like they don't exist?
Well, no,
Because
no,
you're
no.
worried that there are some Muslims somewhere who believe in Sharia law.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying, you have to, this is all
So that's why I
about.
would say that when you're teaching about different cultures, you say, okay, who's in the room? What's on the news? What can I help you understand? And yeah, it's complex. The United States is very complex. What's the culture of the United States? It's complex. But okay, how do we deal with complexity? Well, let's deal with what's relevant.
But I think if all we ever deal with is our differences, we need to get into what are similarities that make us
Absolutely.
Americans, because this whole thing that we're so diverse makes us strong. It's really what we are the same that makes us strong. We can live with customs or traditions, I think are the same thing, our own family traditions, but we never seem to
see as we scroll through strand 6? What would those things be? So, I'm gonna start a list. But before I start a list, I'm gonna give us all about 2 minutes to jot down a couple bullet points of things that we think we should see. And then you can cross off your list as we make a master list. So then we can now look at the concepts and say, hey, let's either change this or keep it or adapt it. Because we're on the circle right now. I want to get us moving forward.
Everybody see this, everybody see this. Yeah, you,
That's the same sheet.
oh, good catch.
ideas and ideas, concepts, and traditions, which is I think that should also, maybe we kind of talked about that a little bit. I don't know how, we don't have anything in here currently under that, but I think that, like you said, would come back to how that looks with your family and your school and so on. I think it should be kept.
Changing what?
Changing ideas, concepts, and traditions is how it's written, but when you get over here to fifth grade, it says identify how ideas, concepts, and traditions have changed over time in the United States. So I'm thinking how we do that as a community, a region, a state, how the ideas and concepts change, depending on where you live.
Traditions. Because we all like the Easter holidays.
What?
We all like the Easter holidays and how they've changed over time.
Huh?
You're not allowed to teach about holidays at all?
Well, we put it on here.
Holidays are tradition.
It's in my list.
Okay.
There were a few other questions that I had.
Okay, why don't we come back to it? We'll just keep,
Okay, I'm confused. What are you wanting? You wanting ideas?
what do we think have to be in here as we look at it?
So, culturally, like economics, politics, things that affect cultures? Or is that already in a different one?
Well, they're in different strands, I
Right.
think, but we can, so how would we say that would?
One of my has to be there. I'm just trying to think of what you're really asking about.
We're not asking to come back and do that for it.
Yeah.
So concepts, I would do some combination of existing concepts of A and D, I would merge together.
Yeah. So tell me what
You
those are.
really don't want to like keep all of them.
Okay,
But
just give me
concepts,
an
A/D. And then I think, and then you do comma, B, H, I, and K.
And separate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll leave it that way.
Okay. Laura, what do you think right now? There's only something.
Yeah, so, understanding how individuals are similar and different. I think the broader that we keep the concepts, the better it's gonna be. Yeah, I don't know where it was. I think if we keep the concepts broader, it's gonna be a lot easier for us to pick what's important. Because in culture, I don't think there has to be a whole lot. We're gonna hit it in a lot of other places too. But I think that sums up a lot of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have individual, similar, and different. I like the idea of unique American culture somewhere in the social studies curriculum. That there are, I think of character development, and I think of places that have been around a lot longer before the formal United States, the United States of America, and I think part of character develops through stories and legends and folk tales that have a moral message, and so to me those are things that are missing as part of our unique heritage to me. But yeah, just like that, Patrick.
That will not be.
Like
Just
what?
like that,
What's
the
that?
Kardashians.
Wow.
They tell their story and it's affecting our culture every day.
But I do think,
We're
that is,
negative with that.
but there just are a lot of countries in the world where character education comes through story. And story that's told down from generation to generation to generation. What's the lesson in this story for people? And I do feel like that. I think we have some of those things, and
we talk about groups relating to institutions, do we look at how that's changed over a period of time? So for example, when the Constitution was first written, women could not vote. They now can vote. You're gonna see slavery was there at one point in time, that changes over time. So do you see how those groups that were in a certain, so somewhere in there, and I don't know what the word to use within it or what it is, but there's been an evolving relationship within there, whether it's groups that have received certain privileges that other groups haven't, such as the right to vote, and some of those over a period of time, how those things have changed. And all the way down through, I mean, and that can go, you can make that local, you can make that, from redlining in St. Louis where certain people couldn't buy houses in certain areas. I mean, there's certain things that have impacted their culture throughout. So how does, I just read that. Right.
Changing the roles of various groups.
But does that not cover, like, the slave trade and the right to vote? And I'm asking,
I think it is, but I think it's that relationship between I think there's a difference between saying this happened and how that, and what actually happens in terms of that relationship between groups. So you may see it in something, but I think when you're looking at this is, and I think in some ways it's addressed when you talk about, I think I've lost it, I want to say the perceptions of groups also, identify how culture is made of some way. Changing ideas, concepts, and tradition. I'm sorry, it's H. The effects of personal and group experiences on perceptions. I think there's something there too. So like if you've been historically had certain things, that's going to change the way you may view certain things also. So I mean I think there's may kind of come in there, but I'm not sure it's ever really completely addressed in the relational piece.
So thank you. One of the things I have written down, I've got a whole page of thoughts. One of the things I have written down is how to explore how is Missouri inclusive in our culture of all of our residents, which would be our state identity, our state traditions, our state cultures. How are they inclusive of all of our residents? That to me is a relationship of institution to individuals. So how does our state still, how is it inclusive? How is our state song? How is our state, right, those pieces I think fit in this strand. I know that maybe a state still is governed and so understand, maybe, I don't know.
But I could even see, like, you could take it out to regions, like I know.
Right, well, if you think of it this way, you can think of how is the American dream, how does the American dream encompass all of the nation, and how people try to get to the American dream and they find barriers, or they begin, that's a whole cultural piece. How do we embody the American dream?
And how has it changed over time?
Right.
I think that's actually, Connecticut has that as one of their, I want to say it's in second grade.
So how's that changed over time?
But is that not economics too? Understand the things that affect culture?
Right, it goes through, but we don't really, unless we ask them to somehow talk about it, I don't think it'll get talked about.
The way North Carolina kind of worded that, they said, understanding diverse culture is visible in local and regional communities, such as language, tradition, art, different things.
So, that's another big piece, and it's in the music strand, but the music strand never hits over to social studies, but I wrote it somewhere. So if we analyze how we are diverse, so we look at diversity in our music, our literature, our dance, our plays. There's so many things to look at. How are we as a class diverse in what we listen to? How are we as a community diverse in what we do? How does the Grape Fest over in that community differ from the crab boil in our community? Those are I think that fits here.
So you say diversity in
artistic
all that.
expression, yeah. But there's other kinds of diversity.
One of the things that I forgot to add on, and I couldn't think of a way to articulate it other than through a question. That how do we preserve culture? You know, that part of that comes through participation. I don't know, but I couldn't think of how to word it other than a question. But I think it's an important discussion or description of how do we, that you have to be intentional in preserving things or preserving heritage or preserving this, you know, that idea of why are museums important, why are festivals important, why are that whole.
So I wrote, compare cultural traditions, how do we pass things on to future generations? Cultural traditions. That's
I
the
guess
same
that would be
idea.
describe how things are passed down from over, yes.
Right.
Yeah, but that's important.
Right, no, I think you're right.
And this probably gets more to curriculum, but as I was thinking of groups and institutions and kids and things like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and Campfire Girls have very specific traditions. You know, that those would be groups that they could read, and institutions that would be very relational to them. Boys and Girls Clubs.
Churches.
Yes. There was actually this kind of back when I was reading this, I was like, oh, this is like what all of them was getting at being talking about was worded quite nice. Explain that Americans have a variety of different religions, community, and family celebrations and customs, and describe celebrations or simply held by members of the class and their families. I thought that was some good wording for getting at if we were to do it along that line.
And I also wrote recall songs and stories that reflect cultural traditions. Do you have more you want to write down? It's
No.
not up there so far.
No, I would just, the ones that I was looking at here that I just had questions about, I guess, why they're there and what they are maybe. Major social institutions, what were they referring to?
Schools, churches, and
Okay, it's a social group, like, okay, what you were just talking about, okay.
Elks, clubs.
Lodge.
Okay.
Illuminati.
The knitting club.
So the American Dream, I will say the language that Connecticut one used was analyze how the concept of the American dream has changed and how various groups have endeavored to reach this goal over time.
I like that. There you go.
But you know,
Yeah, we know.
I would take out the word Connecticut and put Missouri in for most of this, and we would just go with it.
Connecticut.
Except for some of the state history, I guess that might be a little odd. When we talk about whaling, I'm not sure we would have enough thought about the history of whaling
Right.
in Missouri.
I like this wording for elements of culture, and then describe those things. Just instead of like
Say that again.
using the elements of culture and not just culture itself, because culture means so much. What are we wanting them to look at? Like the way people speak or dress or eat or holidays or tradition, whatever. I just think some of that needs better wording to it.
Okay.
There's a lot of culture, but it's not visible, it's not.
You could paprika on your potato salad or not. It's just a big deal.
Right.
Paprika on your what?
On your potato salad. Just remember taking potato salad, like, where's the paprika? Oh, it's out.
I didn't grow up with a paprika mom, because my parents like deviled eggs were like covered with this orange wrap.
So, maybe this doesn't belong here, so I won't write it until I say it. So where is it a part of culture and tradition where we take care of our own? We have a debt to society.
Civic responsibility.
Is that
Is that that?
somewhere else? And so it shouldn't belong here. I'll just keep my mouth shut then.
No,
Okay.
it's a good point to bring up, but I think so too.
Okay. It's a cultural,
What could be cultural?
to me, it's a cultural belief that either you believe that or you don't, but.
Well, it got
we
bigger
need
when
it
you
to-
said debt to society, because I was thinking more along the lines of taking care of our elderly, taking care of our parents. So
Well,
it's
that's
like,
what I
I'm
mean.
not talking like I own the whole
Yeah.
state, but within our own culture of our home, I think we're doing
Right,
the
Indians took care of their own differently than what
Well,
I.
I think that what we're talking about now even gets into a difference with how we define some of these things, because that taking care of the elderly in our culture, if we're gonna say there's an American culture, would that be different than Medicare?
And I think
Social
that hits on
Security.
urge
That
change
is our
over
culture.
time of individuals.
That is our culture, because you can go to other countries and you don't find nursing homes.
Right.
They
So that's
don't
what
exist.
that's-
Let's say you
Because
take
that's
care of
not
them
their
in your
culture.
home, or
Right.
Because they live with
it gets back to self-sufficiency, or
Right, so I mean,
take
that's.
care of our own, the government.
That's why I didn't write it down, I was just bringing it up. So what, is there a piece of relationship between institution and culture and tradition that should be on there?
Is it broad enough to where you're gonna be able to teach it? Or is it relevant to all grade levels, or do we want our kids, is that something we're teaching?
Well, we can teach safety net, we have safety net somewhere in economics, I think. We got the safety net for the citizens of the United States, welfare, with these other things. But how do we take care of our elderly? Do families take care of their own, or do we,
One iceberg.
Can that fall under individual similarities and differences?
possibly. I was just
Oh, it's a good
writing
point.
down my ideas.
Oh, it's good. I just don't know if it's a concept that can stand alone.
I also wrote, do we have somewhere in here where each person should contribute to society? I mean,
I
is
feel
that
that, yeah.
is that a cultural belief? So, okay, so this, all right, I just wanna make sure.
But on that
Indiana's
similarities
on
thing,
that street, that's happening.
Right.
So,
No.
I don't think we put
What
that
about
there.
just, yeah, I mean, we got culture, I think, I'm not sure we ever actually, is culture itself, culture's meeting the needs of people, do we actually talk about culture?
Yeah, we need some glossary terms there.
You know what I'm saying, that there's, do we talk about, is, let's give this one too, but how does the culture of the United States reflect its history is one of the questions that they ask, and it's, what do we mean when we talk about a country's culture? What type of historical events help to create a country's culture? Does the United States today actually have a single culture?
But I'm just saying, if
So
we're
that
throwing
most
out
of
good
it's done
ideas,
through there, so then the question.
how to start with the paper stuff.
Well, we don't have, we
No,
can
but
do
you
that
know what
later,
I'm saying,
right?
so yeah, but just keep it, don't throw out the idea.
I just.
We're all going citizenship, oh wait, we've
Right.
done that one.
I think a lot of what we're talking about actually falls under the similarities, because, all people have art around the world, all people have group rules around the world, all people live in groups, all people have basic needs, all people have language. And that captures, that's a way to look at all of these cultural elements, as well as social elements.
The only other one that I have that I don't see on there, maybe you think it's on there, how do traditions of the past interact with traditions of the present? You think that
Groups
was
changed
covered?
over time.
Possibly.
I mean, that might be a better title for it, what you just said. But I'm assuming what we're gonna do with those is meld them into.
Yeah, some of those may be these things, but I was just trying to.
I like the wording on that. 'Cause we have groups changed over time, and this should be people.
Just thinking on there, just thinking about tradition. this list in mind, if we go back to the concepts, can we make concept A meaningful and fill it in with some of this? Or do we need to do something different with concept A? We kind of liked how 3 looked.
And with keeping with the thing that we've done is third grade will be state. Do you not think kids are able to compare how their needs are met differently than others, than other culture? Or is it about third grade where it needs to go? Because they compare it and they identify what I'm doing, what they're doing, and then what's the same. In second graders do that, Eric? And see, I think there's so much taught through nonfiction text, especially in like K1 and 2, that they get a glimpse and they see that, or that stuff can be reinforced. I just think that we can't keep it in third grade. It's not.
Well, if we're thinking about regions of the world, regions of the state, regions, so it fits in second grade. And that concept fits in second grade when you think about different cultures and regional influences and things like that.
You're talking about a regional culture.
Right.
And if we add that word in there, then yeah. But I think of like if you're in our classroom with kids from all different ethnicities and they all have different cultures, and then comes along December and you celebrate Hanukkah, you celebrate Christmas, you celebrate that, they're able at some point in time to compare just among their peers what you do differently than I do. They do that in either first or second grade, maybe, or they do.
It's not the standard.
Well,
She's saying they're not allowed to, and I'm saying, when
I
we talk
know.
about pilgrims and everything, that's kind of like their celebratory thing at the end. Indians were able to provide these foods, and pilgrims provided these foods, and these are things they never would have thought of, you know.
Yeah, that's not in
but
first and
I
second
think
grade.
But they learn about that, they learn about all that. Aaron, do y'all teach pilgrims in the Mayflower? Yeah, I wanted to say first grade was when he came home and said something about, the ship's name, and reminded us of what we did. And then I write a story if I would have been pilgrim or if I would have been Indians, what I would have done.
Essentially do that in kindergarten.
Holiday.
Well, these guys
You
know.
cannot
That's
say
why.
they're a holiday party, like we don't say you're celebrating
I think
Christmas.
that's an urban rural issue too, in terms of the population that you can
Oh, God, we would
not
never.
wanting to exclude. But that would be true in our district
Right.
too, but it.
We had a principal that put up a holiday tree and ended up,
I have a.
well,
I mean,
because
like,
my
you're
tree
also-
is only, I mean, like, in ours, I mean, I can think my own personal school. I mean, how do I determine which kids' religions I wanna go with? I mean, so like, do I put up all, which do we do? I mean, there's just too many.
But I think that gives us that traditions of the past. and
But there's,
connecting
but
with
that's what I'm
present.
saying, that's. I
Well,
don't
these
know.
kids are American,
That doesn't
right?
say, it doesn't,
You are.
hey, those are two different
There are
things, that's
no
why there's
to have
the freedom of
country,
religion.
You have to have your own to be a.
That's why they have a
We
freedom
didn't
of
even
religion.
have Christmas trees until late, it was late. It was
Christmas
not
was
like.
outlawed
that's
actually
first
during the
century.
Puritans.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Christians who don't do trees, as well.
Right, I'm just saying,
Tree
right.
decorated in your home, I
Right.
mean, I get that, but we do have traditions too. It's not a problem in our district.
But
Yeah.
but how do we distinguish between, how do we make sure that what we do is both inclusive but not exclusive? You know?
Thank you.
So
Talk
bottom
about
line, can make
rather
everybody
than
happy. Yeah,
celebrating.
we talk about the
Still
diversity of
perfect
things.
way.
This is how these people celebrate with the tree. These people celebrate with whatever they
We
celebrate with.
take the step back and say everybody, I mean, if you want to talk simple, everybody has certain traditions, everybody has those cultures.
I like that wording about it.
And
in your
just
class.
discuss, what types of things what are some of the differences you may look at, what are some of those traditions that each person has, as opposed to saying, here's this one and that one, just because there's, like that, but there's two reasons not wanting to do it. One is that we don't necessarily, we're only highlighting one, and two, you don't want to make sure we're leaving something out that kids could be exposed to. I mean, I think there's some learning that could take place even just by them having some exposure to things if we try to list them, and have somebody that comes in with something good. I mean, that's.
And the real trick is that you're not celebrating the holiday, you're teaching about it.
Right. I mean, that's what a different way of saying.
But you're not celebrating.
I'm thinking about like our district and the difference in my district and your district.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have how many different languages?
Rules 20.
And we have.
That's just my
of the
building. I
three,
don't know the district is. That's just our building.
We have a population of Hmong and we have a few Hispanic.
Right.
I mean, the rest are just white farm kids. So how?
I think you can still explain it. Even if you don't do that way, I mean, that's
Yeah, I
where
mean,
you
how
may
do
be
you-
the teacher just discussing. There are different ways that people celebrate different, and even within that, you could have, because we have different languages, but then you also may have kids that speak the same language. We have a fairly large Jewish population in my building. So, on a Jewish holiday, I'll miss 60 to 80 kids out of my building. So it's, that's, you're looking at, there's different things that are all in there, so it may just be a discussion around different people have different things they celebrate, and not only that, but it may be different traditions by family, it can be different traditions by larger groups. I mean, not every person, I'm a white rural farm kid too, but we may have different things that just from our family. that we look
Absolutely,
at a little
even
different.
celebrating the same traditions.
Right.
You have different ways to celebrate. Because not everyone celebrates.
So we should probably word it something.
Just about how people,
Yeah. Not-
tradition, people celebrate things. I mean, what are those that everybody, maybe it's not, I don't know if I'm saying everybody, I can't guarantee it is everybody, but. I would go back to Laura's suggestion to try and keep it broad and maybe there's
Various, discuss various traditions or various holidays or whatever.
Hello?
I think if you're in a district where it is that diverse, if you're in a district where it is that diverse,
Still have
every kid should be able to say,
Yeah.
this is how I do it, this is what I do. And every kid should be able to listen to that other kid and respectfully not just say, I put a picture or you put a pepper or, whatever.
Have trees, teachers.
You go to church on Saturday
Next to
night,
secondary education.
People that,
They try to do it, but it's not been a problem there. We've had a lot of other problems, but that's not been our problem.
That's why I could live in a big city.
Yeah, I guess that's in your choice of living out of the, We have a lot more Messianic Jews, and they don't do Christmas or anything like that. That'll be different. That's a different approach. Not a lot, there's just some things in the church that doesn't come to me. I don't know, you have to think about it.
Well, that's just the difference in our culture is changing.
And usually the ones that you can't please are usually the ones who can't agree to disagree. Or who are able to, I'll hear what you say, okay, now you hear what I say, okay, now we just get along and go on with life because it'll be all right.
That's the problem with the way our society is going. If you don't agree with it, you need to throw a fit and change the law to fix it, because it's your opinion.
We have the KKK.
and shelter.
Those are physical.
Physical.
I mean, if you look, there's.
Right.
But I'm thinking, how am I gonna teach a kindergartner emotional needs of a culture? It's just awkward wording, is what I'm saying. I'd rather it be a broader.
Well, I'm not sure if the.
Yeah, that's why I thought we combined A and B as concepts, because B is really about individual needs.
But I think the layer that you're working on in kindergarten is just, there are different cultures.
Yes.
I don't think you're trying to do that at kindergarten. Trying to say it needs a social or emotional need. And that I don't think that's the part of the that you need them to learn in kindergarten, but you do need them to start learning that there are different cultures.
Frank Buchanan, there are various cultures within your community that have different needs, or something along those lines.
I would say simplicity.
Okay, you can use whatever word you like. I'm just trying to get down to the meat of it, what you want them to do.
So is the concept diverse cultures within the society?
Say that again?
Is the concept diverse cultures within the society? And one of the standards in it, one of the pieces of that is diverse cultures meet individuals' needs. And that's one of the pieces of that. I'm asking a question that's not.
Say that.
I have a hard time with A, B, and D. They all talk about needs. What's the culture to the people, what's the group to the individual, what's the need of the individual. Just wanna share what we have.
So I'm gonna put combine A and B, because the general idea that all people have common physical needs is a good idea for young children. We also all have common emotional needs, regardless of where we are. And social needs, because all people live in groups and need other people to help them to some degree. So that general idea, I think, is good. I think the concept, the way the concept is worded, is awkward.
Okay, so let's pick a new concept.
We all need food, shelter, regardless of where you live.
Food, shelter, clothing, and connection.
Right, which is the emotional, social needs.
Right.
Yeah, my wife always says, oh, you're leaving now. Everyone needs love, and it's proven that people who don't feel like they're loved don't last very long. So that's, I think, what they were hitting at before pushing towards what that. But the way they worded the concept, it really doesn't fit that. So could that be something that's
How do we read a map? That was easy.
No, it wasn't the first half of the first day.
Yeah, it's so
It
true.
was not.
You're right,
It was
true.
not until-
They never are.
I just, to the point of,
No.
the afternoon's gonna be okay, I'm just not even gonna worry about it.
Yeah, that's the way I'm feeling.
It's okay, it's just
Should
part
we
of
go
the
ahead and
process.
break?
That's what I'm listening to.
And we could.
It's 9:05.
Should we just go ahead and break and let this kind of percolate
I
for a little
truly do
bit?
think it's just the regrouping of it.
Yeah.
Driving in, switching gears.
Yep.
Just like getting in and
Well, it's 12:45.
I like it with how they said, cultures and individuals or cultures and groups. That's so much more clear than maybe a we. I take the needs out, take the knowledge out, take the, all that other stuff out and just say, okay, so look, here we're looking at cultures at the individual level, here we're looking at cultures at the group level, because that's kind of what the strand says all along, knowledge of relationships, which is the culture of individual, group, and institution. It's just from inside out.
So what if the concept were individual and groups cultural interactions?
So much simpler for me.
Is that could that be concept A? Individual and group cultural interactions. So there's for me it's different.
At least what we're looking at in terms of stressing that all people have these things. And they're going to go in differently based on their culture.
I could see breaking what you said into two. Whatever you just said one way with individual, and whatever you said with just the group. Because I think there is a real difference between the two. And then when you start to go across the grade level, you're gonna look, okay, the kindergarten, the individual, and then the group. And of course, that's self-family school.
okay, let me say it one other way. This is better for complicated. Cultural characteristics of individuals and groups.
So I would add the word common.
Some aren't common though, but do all cultures have common?
What matters what those.
Okay, so we're thinking common cultural characteristics of individuals and groups.
Yeah, all people have art, all people live in social organizations, all people have basic needs, all people have language, all these things that we say make up culture,
So those are
all held in common by
Well,
all
that's that
people.
reality show we had at the Impossible List. What's his name? No, that's not a group.
Bears.
Bear? No, it's not that. I recorded.
Dodge.
Dodge McCann.
McDodge.
McDodge. Oh, he's awesome. He was
No, I
awesome.
say that like I watch him every week. I've seen it one time, Patrick.
Yeah,
Don't judge me.
Oh, I watch it all the time. Hey, Google it. It's amazing. Now, he isn't a culture, because he has other people who live like him amongst the million miles of
He lives very simply. However, his log home looks like it's about $3 million. He's out running through the woods, but when he goes home, that's a pretty nice log cabin.
Now, that's not good. himself, and he goes and finds
And he
someone.
buries, I saw that episode where he has
His stash.
his stash buried under the riverbed.
It's
He
very
goes
cool.
and digs it out.
I know you said you saw it.
Okay, what's his name?
I wouldn't believe in any of it. I don't believe
It's
any
kind of
reality
like, no,
TV. I don't
here
believe
it
any
is.
reality TV.
It's that one right there, traditions of the past interact, he's like an updated Rosetta. It's just, it's
Yeah,
the
I've seen it.
modern-
I've seen it.
Oh, I
Oh.
like it. I think it's great.
I've seen it. I
I've
prefer
seen the
Survivor Man.
commercials.
I like
No,
Survivor.
Survivor. I
Now
prefer
that's-
Survivor Man.
That's
Much
fair,
more
right?
legit. No,
Okay, 'cause
it's the
Barry
real.
Willis was
Bears
caught.
the fake.
Yeah, he was like caught in the.
Yeah,
going
he's
to the
fake.
hotel after
Survivor
the
Man's
film.
legit.
Oh,
He
yeah,
had to
he's-
quit
Let's
because he was gonna die. Basically, yeah, the physical toll it took on him was pushing him to that.
So why would, it
Less
seems
strong.
contradictory to have individual there.
He's
Gained
legit.
some weight in the new episode they're doing now, Bigfoot.
Yeah, which
That's
is
why
scary.
I wasn't thinking common.
Gained weight, so.
I just struggle a lot with the word common in there. I just-
Common's the word I don't
maybe
care
it's just
for.
me.
Because if we look at cultural characteristics of individuals and groups, you see commonality. That's what you see as the commonality.
What if don't? They find the differences.
Oh, they absolutely see the differences.
They find the differences.
But to find differences,
Okay,
you find
gotcha,
commonality.
No, you don't. You don't even think about the commonalities. That's the whole point. All you do is people look at difference. That's what the problem is.
So when we inside the individual belief though, is that where we put similarities and differences?
Well, so that's what they've done here, right? Name, common, physical, social. That's to force people to see that it's common. There are commonalities.
So as we
Otherwise
go
you
across
don't.
the.
If you
that's
just
what-
leave it as cultural characteristics, people are going to say, my cultural characteristic is I eat sushi. My cultural characteristic is I eat, deer. They're not going to say, oh no, we all need food.
Okay,
And
so.
we get food based on where we are. We're surrounded by an ocean or we live in a forest.
So if we're looking at cultural characteristics, isn't from that point on where we say, look at common, look at this, isn't that where we tell them to do that?
What if we switch it all around? What if we just say characteristics of individual and group culture? We make learning about what culture actually is the part in here instead of learning about the individuals, the characteristics of groups. If we're trying to determine what culture actually is, because if we're saying everybody has a culture, if you determine what culture is, and that's inevitably going to lead to conversations that are going to talk about some of those things. Because what you're talking about is how you ultimately will end up everybody, so what is that makes somebody's culture? What are we actually talking about? And
Talking about art, talking about language.
How are we alike?
so all those
And
parts
how
when
we
you
get that.
define culture are things that everybody's going to have an aspect of, so there's your similarities, and then you get the specifics of art. The art in a traditional area where it's a pueblo is going to look different than the Iroquois. I mean, that's going to be two different things, largely, and maybe because this will be art. They both have art, but their art may be different. So as we talk about what actually defines culture, then you're going to see the similarities, but also some of the
But you
more
have,
finite
but
differences.
the point is you have to help the children understand that all people have that.
That would
And
be
if
when
you-
you're talking
and if you
about
don't
what aspects
forefront
make up
that,
a culture.
It doesn't happen.
That's what I'm saying. So if you talk about what actually is
Mhm.
including, you're talking about what makes up a group culture. Those are the parts that everybody has the same. And
Right, they're in common.
now, the only thing I would say is I'm not so sure that only focus. I think we don't have a problem by focusing on differences. You don't have a problem until you start to rank order it. Until you start to determine one's good and one's bad. It's when we start to put an opinion onto that difference. We can both have differences. There's nothing wrong with that. It's that I start to say your differences become worse than mine, then that's what we start to have a problem.
And as adults, hopefully we can do that, but in child development, psychology, they don't. Difference is often strength. Group identity
see, I'm
develops
gonna
very,
say,
group identity, you can look up the psychology.
And I
literature
can
on that. The child
sit
development
and
literature
listen
on
to
your
kids
own.
talk about things, and they just see it as, okay, you do this, I do this. I think you're more likely to see adults do than you know.
Group identity develops very young, and then what happens with that group identity is conditioned on the experiences they have. Are they surrounded by people who say it's cool, or are they surrounded by people who don't? the danger. Maybe, look it up. Google it.
Hey, how about understand individuals and group cultures, similarities and differences? I think everybody happy with that.
Say it again.
Hold on, I gotta write it down before I forget it.
It almost sounds like an objective though instead of.
I know, and then so I try to make it from an objective into a concept, and I just wanna put cultural characteristics. Or, I like how you put cultural at the end, characteristics of individual and group cultures, period. And then talk about the similarities and differences as you go across. Because in no other concept do we use common for similarity or difference.
Maybe we're trying to make two concepts one. Maybe one is just common human needs, and then another strand is that there's just a common human needs strand. Because while we talk about, I don't know that I ever, as a kindergarten teacher, taught wants and needs without talking about their common human people needs. That if we want to ensure that we articulate it, I'm not sure whether it's best to do that in economics or best to do that here. I guess it would be here because it's about that relationship to your world almost, that maybe there's just a common need one, and it may not be that we have something in every grade level. It's just a basic, here's where you need to have that discussion that we all have common needs for food, shelter.
K says ideas and beliefs of different cultures. And there's nothing in it. So I think if you left A as the common, you could keep K as the different.
Because we don't have to, you just have this circumstance where we need to, we don't get it back concept of it. So if we want to articulate that somewhere, but I feel like we keep trying to combine them and they're really two different ways of thinking. So,
Which is the same way I feel with individuals and groups. We could try to define that in the plan, I just don't know if we can. Because they've even divided it, and I guess that's how they look at it, individual, group, and institution. The small, the bigger, the bigger.
Is that what you think?
no,
Do what?
I know that she didn't, but I identify.
Who did it? You did or I? Okay.
It's a maybe.
One o'clock. Take lunch.
Where you wanna go?
Oh, the other big question.
There you go.
We always struggle with.